Princess Leora had always been different, even before she understood what it meant to be a princess. She grew up surrounded by tall crystal towers, glowing lights, and the soft hum of Illyrian technology that filled every corner of her world. Her home planet, Illyria, was known across the galaxies for its beauty, intelligence, and perfect order. Every citizen grew up knowing their place, fulfilling their role with pride. But Leora's place was never simple. Even though she belonged to the royal family, from the moment she was born, the royal doctors whispered among themselves. They used gentle words in front of her mother, Queen Malera, but the truth was clear in their eyes. Leora was not like the other royal children. There was something different in her body, something that made her future uncertain. As she grew older, the whispers spread from the medical halls to the palace corridors. People did not speak loudly. But Leora could always hear their quiet comments by the time she reached adulthood. Everyone knew the same story. Princess Leora could never have a child. In Illyrian culture, this was not just a personal matter, it was a symbol. Their people saw fertility as a sign of strong energy, a bond with the universe, and a way of carrying forward royal blood. When a royal child was born, the whole empire celebrated for days. But for Leora, this dream was denied before she even understood what it meant. Most people were polite to her face, but politeness could not hide real feelings. Some relatives smiled at her, but avoided long conversations. Some nobles bowed respectfully, but exchanged glances behind her back. Leora learned early in life that sometimes silence hurt more than harsh words. Even though she was highly educated, talented in diplomacy, and trained to be a future leader, people still saw only one thing when they looked at her. The princess, who could not continue the royal line, Leora handled everything with grace. She never raised her voice, never argued, never cried in front of others. She carried her dignity like a shield, always standing straight, always speaking with calmness. But deep inside, she felt a quiet sadness that never completely left her. Things changed the day. A group of high-ranking nobles met secretly in a silver hall deep inside the palace. These nobles had always disliked Leora. They thought she was too quiet, too gentle, too broken to lead the empire. They wanted someone stronger, someone who fit their old traditions. So they came up with a cruel idea meant to embarrass her and push her away from the throne forever. Their plan was simple. They would send Leora to Earth, a small blue planet far from Illyrian understanding. Earth was known to be unpredictable, full of different species and emotions. And the people there were very different from Illyrians. To the nobles, sending Leora there was like sending her into a wild forest just to prove she did not belong anywhere. Important, but they could not openly say they wanted to humiliate her. A direct insult to the royal family was forbidden. So they wrapped their idea in pretty words and called it a cultural exchange mission. They claimed Earth needed guidance. They claimed Leora was the perfect one to study human emotions. They pretended it was a great honor. Queen Malera was unsure, but the council pressured her. The nobles used fancy language, made grand promises, and insisted this mission would strengthen Illyria's reputation. The queen finally agreed, thinking it might help her daughter grow. Leora, hearing the plan, understood what the nobles truly wanted. She saw the small smiles on their faces, the sharpness in their eyes, the false respect in their voices. But instead of refusing, she accepted the mission. She stood tall in the middle of the council chamber, her silver gown glowing softly under the blue lights. Everyone expected her to protest. Everyone expected her to show pain, frustration, or fear. But Leora simply said, "If this will help the empire, I will go." The nobles exchanged shocked looks. They had hoped she would make a scene. They wanted her to look weak. Instead, she looked stronger than they expected. That night, Leora walked alone through the garden behind the palace. The air glowed with tiny floating lights. She touched one with her fingertips and watched it drift away. She wondered why her life always felt like she was being pushed aside. She wondered what Earth would be like, loud, emotional, full of unpredictable life. She felt uncertain, but she also felt something new, a small spark of courage. Maybe leaving her world would change something inside her. Maybe the distance would help her see herself differently. On the day of departure, the sky above the royal port shimmered with energy. A sleek silver transport ship waited on the landing platform. Its lights blinked slowly, as if breathing. The nobles gathered to watch, pretending to be respectful. Some whispered behind their hands. Others smiled politely, their eyes cold. Leora walked up the ramp with her head held high. She did not look at the nobles. She did not look at anyone. She kept her eyes straight ahead, focused on the future. Every step echoed through the port, like quiet symbols of a new chapter. As she reached the top of the ramp, she paused for a moment. She looked back at the planet she had always called home. Illyria was beautiful shining towers, floating bridges, and lights that danced like stars. It was everything she had ever known. But it was also the place where she had been judged all her life. She whispered softly, "I will return stronger." Then she stepped inside the ship. The doors closed behind her with a soft hiss. The engine hummed to life. Blue energy gathered beneath the ship, lifting it slowly from the platform. The crowd below watched silently. The nobles waited for something dramatic, but Leora stayed calm, sitting in her seat with her hands folded gently in her lap. The ship rose higher and higher until the planet below looked like a glowing jewel. Leora's heart beat fast, but she did not show fear. She had spent her whole life hiding pain. She could hide fear too. As the stars blurred around the ship and the engine moved into faster-than-light travel, she finally let out a small breath. She didn't know what Earth would bring. She didn't know what humans were like. She didn't know if she would be welcomed or mocked again. But she did know one thing. She was done letting others decide her worth. For the first time in years, she felt a quiet hope. She was not a broken princess. She was someone about to change her own story. When Princess Leora's ship reached Earth's atmosphere, she felt the entire vessel shake gently. Clouds brushed against the outer surface like soft waves, and beams of sunlight stretched through the windows. She had never seen sunlight this warm before. Illyria's light was bright and sharp, created by powerful energy cores. But Earth's sunlight looked soft, like a quiet smile from the sky. The ship slowly descended toward a hidden Earth facility, far away from crowded cities. Human leaders did not want the world to panic about alien visits, so only a small group of trained specialists knew she was coming. Leora prepared herself as the landing gear touched the ground with a low hum. She expected loud alarms, armed guards, or panicked scientists. Instead, when the doors opened, she found only one person standing at the bottom of the ramp. He was tall, with dark hair, gentle eyes, and a calm expression. His name was Ethan Hale. He worked as a researcher and emotional behavior specialist for an international science organization. He had studied different species across the galaxy and had been chosen because of his steady nature and respectful attitude. As the cool air of Earth touched Leora's skin, Ethan took one step forward, placed his hand on his chest, and bowed politely. "Welcome to Earth," he said in a warm voice. Leora blinked in surprise. She expected fear, or stiff professionalism, or even fake excitement. But Ethan's voice was genuine. His bow was gentle, not like the cold, formal greetings she received on Illyria. She felt a small sense of comfort she didn't expect. She walked down the ramp with slow, graceful steps. Her silver markings glowed faintly under Earth's sunlight. Ethan watched, not with fear, but with quiet curiosity.
Now most humans
Might have stared or stepped back. But Ethan stood firm, respecting her space yet showing no fear. "I am Princess Leora of the Illyrian Empire." She introduced herself in a clear voice. "I know," Ethan replied with a small smile. "It's an honor to meet you. I'll be assisting you during your stay here." His calmness surprised her again. Leora studied his face, trying to understand what kind of person he was. He did not avoid eye contact. He did not show nervousness. If anything, he seemed peaceful. She liked that Ethan guided her inside the facility. The hallways were simple white walls, glowing screens, and quiet doors. It was nothing like the shining crystal halls of Illyria, but it felt warmer, more human, more real. As they walked, Leora observed everything. The scent of Earth's air was different, more natural, filled with distant hints of grass and soil. The sound of human footsteps echoed softly. Even the temperature felt more alive than the controlled climate she grew up with. "This planet feels emotional," she said suddenly. Ethan looked at her, surprised but amused. "That's an interesting way to describe Earth." "It is true," she insisted, her voice soft. "The air feels like it changes with mood." Ethan laughed gently. "Maybe you're right." He guided her to a comfortable observation room prepared for her. It had soft lights, a sofa, screens with information about Earth, and a large window that showed the sky. Leora stood by the window for a long moment. The clouds moved slowly, shaped by the wind, free and unpredictable. Leora felt something shift inside her chest. Ethan noticed her quiet expression. "I can show you around the campus if you like," he offered. "Only if you're ready." Leora nodded. "I am ready." Their tour began with small steps. Ethan explained Earth's customs, how humans greeted each other, how emotions changed their voices, how smiles worked, how humor could be misunderstood, how people reacted differently to stress. Leora listened carefully, her eyes wide with interest. Emotions were not commonly expressed on her planet. They were believed to be distractions. But here on Earth, emotions were everywhere, shaping voices, shaping decisions, shaping relationships. Ethan noticed she was trying very hard to understand everything. Even things that humans understood naturally. "You don't have to learn it all in one day," he said kindly. Leora looked at him with calm eyes. "I do not like making mistakes." "It's okay to make mistakes," Ethan replied softly. "It's how humans learn." She seemed unsure, but she appreciated his words. Later that day, they entered a quiet lab filled with glowing screens and soft beeping machines. Ethan explained that he needed to run a few basic health scans, nothing harmful, just routine tests to ensure her safety on Earth. Leora sat on a comfortable chair, and Ethan adjusted the scanning devices. As he worked, Leora observed him closely. He moved with careful precision. His hands were steady, his voice gentle, and his eyes focused. He realized he was not just calm, he was kind. Her entire life she had been surrounded by people who judged her silently. But Ethan's gaze held no hidden thoughts, no pity, no sharp edge. It was simply the gaze of someone who cared about understanding others. She felt strangely comfortable. When the scans ended, Ethan invited her to sit at a round table with a few Earth snacks available: fruits, crackers, and a warm drink called tea. Leora picked up a piece of fruit, examined it, and finally took a small bite. The flavor surprised her. "It tastes alive," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "That's fresh fruit for you." They talked for a long while. Ethan asked about her planet's traditions. Leora explained the floating gardens, the glowing trees, and the silent ceremonies. She told him how Illyrians focused on discipline, order, and clarity. Ethan listened with full attention, occasionally asking gentle questions. He never interrupted or rushed her. At one point Ethan said, "It sounds beautiful, but also a bit strict." Leora looked at him carefully. "It is beautiful, but sometimes beauty feels heavy." Ethan understood more from that one sentence than she expected. The next days passed with steady peace. Leora explored Earth with Ethan beside her learning about weather, human culture, simple emotions like curiosity and excitement. She watched humans laugh, talk loudly, and express themselves freely. At first she felt overwhelmed, but slowly she learned to enjoy it. Ethan took her outside the facility one afternoon. They stood on a grassy field surrounded by tall trees. The wind touched her hair softly, and sunlight warmed her face. The natural sounds filled her ears: birds, rustling leaves, distant water. Leora closed her eyes, letting the planet speak in its own quiet way. "This is the first time I feel calm," she whispered. "Earth can do that," Ethan said with a soft smile. "It has a way of touching you." Leora looked at him. "Do all humans care as much as you do?" Ethan shrugged lightly. "Not all, but many try." "You try," Leora said simply. Ethan nodded. "I do." Their bond grew slowly, like a gentle river flowing forward. There were no dramatic moments, no sudden changes, just two people learning to understand each other. Leora found herself waiting for their daily conversations. She watched Ethan's expressions closely, learning how humans showed concern, kindness, or joy. She even tried smiling a few times, though her attempts were small and soft. One evening, Ethan walked her back to her room. Leora paused outside the door. "Thank you," she said unexpectedly. "For what?" Ethan asked, surprised. "For speaking to me like I matter." Ethan's expression softened. "Leora, you do matter, maybe more than you realize." She looked away for a moment, letting the words settle deep inside her. No one on her planet had ever said something so simple yet so meaningful. After Ethan left, Leora stood by her window again. The night sky of Earth looked very different from Illyria's. The stars looked closer, more personal, as if they wanted to tell her stories. She felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest, a soft warmth she couldn't explain. Inside that quiet room, she whispered to herself, "Perhaps this world will change me." And she did not know it yet, but this peaceful connection with Ethan. These small moments, these gentle exchanges were about to shape her life far more deeply than she ever expected. Days passed peacefully as Princess Leora continued her stay on Earth. Every morning, she woke up to gentle sunlight touching her window, something she had never experienced on her own planet. Illyrian light was artificial and controlled, but Earth's light felt natural and comforting. Sometimes she stood near the window for long minutes, simply watching the sky change colors. It gave her a sense of calm she had never known before. Ethan continued to guide her through daily routines. Sometimes they walked around the gardens, sometimes they explored the research halls, and sometimes they simply sat and talked about life. Their conversations were always gentle, slow, and honest. Leora slowly discovered that Ethan was someone who listened with his heart, not just his ears. That made her trust him more every day. One afternoon, Ethan invited Leora to the main research lab. He explained that they needed to do more health tests, not because something was wrong, but because Earth's environment was very different from Illyria's. Humans wanted to make sure she stayed healthy and safe during her stay. Leora agreed. She didn't mind the tests. She had gone through many medical checks on her own planet. Most Illyrian doctors had examined her in cold, emotionless silence. She expected the same here, but Ethan's gentle approach made a huge difference. He spoke softly, explained everything clearly, and always checked if she felt comfortable. It was new for her, but she liked it. The lab was quiet and bright. Soft blue lights glowed from the machines. Ethan helped her sit on a comfortable chair. He adjusted a few screens and prepared the scanners. As he worked, he smiled lightly. "You're handling life on Earth very well," he said. Leora tilted her head slightly. "I am learning. Humans are emotional. But I think I understand a little more each day," Ethan chuckled. "That's a good start." He placed a monitoring band gently on her wrist. Leora watched his movements closely. His hands were steady, and his expression was calm, as always. She felt safe around him, a new feeling she still didn't fully understand. When Ethan activated the scanner, a soft blue light covered Leora's body. She felt a warm, gentle vibration, nothing uncomfortable. The machine beeped quietly as it collected data. Ethan leaned closer to the screen, studying the results. At first, everything looked normal. The scanner showed her energy patterns, her cellular structure, and her overall health. But then, Ethan frowned slightly. Not in fear, just in curiosity. "That's strange," he whispered. Leora's eyes narrowed. "Is something wrong?" Ethan quickly shook his head. "No, not wrong. Just unexpected." He tapped the screen, zooming in on certain lines of data. Leora could see the soft glow of her biological markers shifting across the screen. Ethan ran the scan again to make sure it wasn't a mistake. The same unusual pattern appeared. Leora watched him carefully. "Tell me." Ethan turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "Your body is changing. Changing how?" she asked calmly. "Your regenerative systems are activating." Ethan pointed to the glowing lines. "These areas were dormant. They were supposed to stay inactive your whole life, right?" Leora nodded slowly. "Yes," Illyrian science said, "these parts of my biology cannot work." They said it is impossible, well, Ethan said gently. Earth seems to be waking them up. Leora looked at the screen, trying to understand the meaning. Her heart began to beat faster, not from fear, but from a strange rising hope. She had lived her whole life believing something inside her was broken. But now, the data in front of her suggested the opposite. Why is this happening? She asked in a soft voice. It might be Earth's environment, Ethan explained. Something about the atmosphere, the natural elements, or even the energy patterns here may be affecting your biology in ways we don't fully understand. Leora stared at the glowing lines for a long moment, her mind filled with questions. She felt the world shift around her quietly, but powerfully. Ethan looked at her gently. How do you feel? I do not know, Leora answered honestly. This is something I never imagined. Ethan sat beside her, giving her space yet showing support. We'll study it together. You're not alone in this. His words settled into her heart like a warm light. Over the next days, Ethan ran more tests. Each scan showed the same result. Her dormant systems were coming to life, slowly but steadily. The more time she spent on Earth, the stronger the changes became. She felt different, more energetic, more aware, more alive. Sometimes she felt a warm sensation in her chest or a gentle strength in her limbs. It was never painful, only surprising. One evening, after a long day of testing, Leora sat outside in the garden. The sky was filled with stars. Earth's night sky looked softer and more friendly than Illyria's sharp, bright stars. Ethan joined her, carrying 2 cups of warm herbal drink. He handed her 1 cup. You've had a long day, as Leora said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. My understanding of myself is changing. Ethan nodded. I imagine it must feel overwhelming. Leora looked at him. It feels like I might become someone different. Maybe you're becoming who you were always meant to be, Ethan said softly. Leora let his words soak into her heart. They made her chest feel warm. The next morning, Ethan called Leora to the lab again. He looked a little more serious than usual, but not worried, just focused. Leora felt her own heartbeat quicken as she approached the seat. He started the scan once more. The same warm light washed over her. The machine beeped a few times and displayed new information on the screen. When Ethan saw the results, his eyes widened for a second. He blinked, checked again, and then looked at her with a gentle but stunned expression. Leora. He said quietly, I need you to see this. She stepped closer to the screen. The data was different this time. New patterns glowed softly, forming shapes she had never seen before in her own medical records. Her voice was barely a whisper. What does it mean? Ethan turned to her, speaking carefully. Leora, your body is not just healing. It's creating new life. She stared at him, not understanding at first. Explain. Ethan pointed to the scans. These markers, these are early signs of growth. Of development, Leora. You are expecting a child. For a moment, the world felt completely still. Leora's breath froze. She had heard these words in dreams she'd never allowed herself to believe in. Her whole life, every doctor, every relative, every noble had told her the same thing. She could never have a child. Yet now, standing on a planet far from her own, with a human researcher by her side, the impossible had happened. Leora slowly sat down, her hands trembling. Her eyes softened, glowing faintly with emotion she could not hide. She was quiet for a long time, trying to understand the truth. Ethan knelt in front of her. Are you all right? She looked at him with a soft, almost fragile expression. I do not know what to feel. All my life I believed this was impossible. Suddenly, it is real. Ethan placed a gentle hand near her, not touching, but close enough to offer comfort. Whatever happens, you're not alone. I will help you through everything. Leora closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, a tear slid down her cheek, soft, silent tear, full of years of pain and new hope. She did not hide it. This changes everything, she whispered. Yes, Ethan said softly. It does. That night, Leora stood by her window again, looking at the stars with a new feeling inside her. Earth had given her something her own world never could, healing hope, a new future. She gently placed her hand on her stomach. Her heart felt warm, full, and alive. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. She whispered into the quiet night, "Thank you, Earth." Little did she know that this miracle would soon shake to worlds and rewrite her destiny forever. When Princess Leora learned the truth about her condition, she felt as if the entire universe had shifted. She had lived her whole life believing she was incomplete, believing something inside her had failed before she even had a chance to grow. But now, standing on Earth with gentle sunlight spilling across the lab floor, she held a truth that felt almost too big for her heart. Ethan stayed close, watching her with calm understanding. He didn't rush her. He didn't overwhelm her with questions. He simply stayed beside her like a quiet pillar of support. That alone helped her breathe more steadily. For the next few days, Leora spent a lot of time thinking. She walked through the gardens alone, letting the cool wind brush against her skin. She touched the leaves of trees, listened to the soft sounds of nature, and felt the world's steady heartbeat beneath her feet. Earth felt warm, welcoming, and alive in a way Illyria never did. Yet even with this peaceful environment, Leora had a deep fear inside her, a fear of what her people would say if they discovered the truth. Illyria valued perfection. They valued strong genetics and clear lineage. If they learned she had conceived a child far from home, without the Illyrian Council's approval, much less with the unexpected combination of energies inside her body, she didn't know what would happen. Ethan seemed to sense her worries. One evening, he joined her outside on the balcony. The sky was turning orange and purple as the sun slowly set. Leora leaned on the railing, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "You've been quiet," Ethan said gently. "I have been thinking," she replied. He nodded. "About the future?" Leora turned to face him, her silver markings glowing faintly in the fading light. "My people will not understand this. They may see it as a mistake, or a reason to question everything about me." Ethan took a slow breath. "But what do you see it as?" Leora lowered her gaze. "I see it as a miracle. Something I thought I would never experience." Ethan's expression softened. "Then that matters more than anyone else's opinion." Leora looked at him with quiet surprise. "You speak as if your words can erase years of judgment," he smiled. "Maybe they can help soften the weight." His sincerity touched her more deeply than she expected. As days passed, Leora's energy shifted. She felt new strength growing inside her. Sometimes she placed her hand on her stomach, still amazed at the thought of life forming within her. The soft warmth she felt was peaceful, almost like a gentle light. Ethan continued to monitor her health, but he also made sure she enjoyed her days. He took her to nearby fields where the wind danced across tall grass. He showed her how humans celebrated small joys, sharing warm drinks, watching sunsets, laughing at small accidents in the kitchen. Listening to soft music in the evening, these moments helped Leora realize something important. On Earth, life wasn't measured only by achievements or duties. It was measured by feelings, experiences, and connections. And that made her heart open in ways she didn't expect. One afternoon, after a peaceful walk, Ethan received an urgent call from the communication center. He returned to Leora with a serious look. "You have a message from Illyria?" he said. Leora froze. No one from her planet had contacted her since she left. She knew the nobles had sent her here as a quiet joke, a way to push her aside. She didn't expect them to care where she was or what she was doing. "What does the message say?" she asked softly. "They want to schedule a formal status update," Ethan replied. "They want to know how your mission is progressing." Leora felt her heartbeat speed up. Illyria wanted a report. They wanted proof she was following their expectations. They wanted to be reminded of her place. She inhaled slowly. "I must speak to them," she said. Ethan nodded. "I'll set up the communication room." The room was prepared with dim lights and a large communication screen. Leora took a deep breath before stepping inside. Her heart felt heavy, but she kept her posture straight. She was a princess. She would not show fear. When the screen activated, the faces of several Illyrian nobles appeared stern, emotionless, and polished. At the center was Counselor Valor, the man who disliked her the most. "Princess Leora," he said with a thin smile, "it is good to see you alive and well." Leora kept her face calm. "I am progressing with the mission as planned." "And Earth?" another noble asked. "Are they cooperative?" "Very cooperative," Leora replied. "Their scientific teams have been respectful." Counselor Valor leaned slightly forward. "We want to ensure you have not forgotten the purpose of your assignment." Leora felt a small chill. She understood the hidden message. "Do not embarrass us. Do not act against our expectations." She chose her words carefully. "I am gathering all the information required for emotional analysis.
How good.
We will expect a complete report soon. Remember, Princess, you represent the Empire." Leora held her breath until the screen finally turned off. Her chest felt tight. Ethan placed a hand on the table near her. "You handled that perfectly." She looked at him, her eyes slightly dim. "They do not care how I feel. They never have." Ethan softened his voice. "Maybe it's time you start caring more about your own voice than theirs." Leora stared at him, realizing how true that sounded. The days grew busier as Leora prepared her official report. She worked hard, wanting to ensure that her mission looked flawless on the surface. But every time she placed her hand on her stomach, she felt a sense of fear and protectiveness. If Illyria discovered her condition, would they try to take the child away? Would they claim it as an experiment? Would they use it as proof she was unstable? These thoughts made Leora hold her stomach with gentle care. This life growing inside her was innocent. It carried no politics, no expectations. It was a quiet miracle, and she wanted to protect it with everything she had. Ethan noticed her growing anxiety. One evening, he brought her a small notebook. "Write your feelings here," he suggested. "Not for reports. Just for yourself." Leora opened the notebook slowly. It felt soft and simple, not like the glowing data tablets of Illyria. She touched the pages gently. "You think writing will help?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Sometimes putting thoughts on paper helps you understand them better." Leora gave a small nod and tried writing that night. The words came slowly at first, but then more easily. She wrote about her fears, her hopes, her confusion, and her growing attachment to Earth. She wrote about Ethan's kindness and how it made her feel seen. She didn't write everything, but enough to help her breathe more easily. A few days later, Leora and Ethan received surprising news. Illyria had scheduled a sudden visit. They wanted to send a small team to Earth to inspect progress. Leora's heart dropped. If Illyrian doctors came, they would immediately detect her condition. And once they knew, everything would change. Her child would no longer be hers. They would claim it for scientific study or royal politics. Ethan saw her hands trembling slightly. "Leora," he said gently, "we will figure this out." She looked at him with fear she couldn't hide. "They cannot find out. If they do, I don't know what they will do." Ethan stood beside her. "You're not alone. I'll help protect you." Leora closed her eyes in gratitude. She trusted him completely now. As the Illyrian ship approached Earth, Leora knew she was running out of time. The peaceful days she shared with Ethan were ending. A storm was coming, and she would have to make a difficult choice, one that could change her future forever. Leora stood on the highest balcony of the Illyrian royal hall, holding her child close as the morning sun spread soft, golden light across the white city towers. The gentle wind brushed her hair and carried the distant sound of people cheering. The entire empire had gathered below, celebrating her return. Just months ago, these same people barely spoke her name. Today they waited for her to step forward and speak as someone important, someone respected, someone who had changed their beliefs. It felt unreal, even to her. She looked down at her child, whose eyes shimmered with mixed colors, silver from her, warm brown from Ethan. The baby made a small sound, twisting tiny fingers in the air as if trying to catch the sunlight. Seeing the child's soft movements made Leora's heart warm. Everything she had faced, every hurtful whisper and every lonely night, felt worth it when she looked at this small life she now protected. Behind her, she heard gentle footsteps. Ethan walked slowly into the balcony, trying not to disturb her quiet moment. He was still in awe of the Illyrian world around him. Humans were not used to floating structures, glowing walls, or sky bridges shimmering like living metal. Sometimes he stared at everything with wide eyes like a curious child. But whenever he looked at Leora, his expression softened into something steady and calm. "You're early," he said in a warm voice, joining her at the railing. "I could not sleep," she replied softly. "There's too much to think about." Ethan leaned in slightly, careful not to make sudden movements. He knew this day was important to her. "You'll do great." "You always do," Leora smiled a little. "Do I?" "Even when I feel as if I am guessing every step." "Yes," he said with a small laugh. "That's leadership. No one knows everything, but you keep moving. That's what sets you apart." His words eased some of the tension in her chest. She took a deep breath and looked back at the people below. Today was not just about her child. It was about her future role, her place in the empire, and the truth she had carried for so long. She had left her world as someone mocked and underestimated. She had returned with a miracle. But miracles alone did not earn respect. Courage did. She planned to show her people that she was ready to rise. Beyond everything she had suffered, a soft knock sounded at the balcony door. Representative Chiron, one of her father's advisors, stepped inside. Once, he had doubted her like everyone else. Now, he stood slightly straighter when speaking to her. "Princess Leora," said with a respectful bow, "the council requests your presence." "They are waiting for your first address." Leora nodded. "We will be there shortly." Chiron bowed again and left. Ethan exhaled slowly. Still getting used to being addressed with that much respect? Leora gave him a gentle look. "I am used to being addressed with the opposite." Ethan reached out and touched her arm lightly, a small gesture of support. "Those days are gone." She hoped he was right. They walked together through the shining halls. The large doors to the council chamber opened automatically as she approached. Inside, tall windows shaped like wings let light pour into the room. The long circular table was filled with council members and nobles, some allies, some skeptical, but all curious. At the back of the room, her father, Emperor Rael, stood tall and silent. His eyes softened when they met hers. He had always loved her deeply, even when the Empire pressured him to view her as weak. Now, his pride in her was unmistakable. The room quieted completely as Leora entered. She handed her child gently to Ethan and stepped forward. Every gaze remained fixed on her. She felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken expectations, but she refused to let fear control her. Emperor Rael raised a hand. "My daughter has returned to us with strength none of us understood. Today she speaks not as someone doubted, but as someone who has changed our future." Leora bowed her head respectfully and then addressed the room. "I was sent away as a quiet insult. Many believed I had no purpose, no value, and no future." She paused, letting her words settle. "But what I discovered on Earth was not embarrassment. It was healing. It was truth." The council members shifted in their seats. Some looked ashamed, others attentive. "My child is not a symbol of my worth," she continued softly. "My worth existed long before this. My child simply revealed what was already there." The Emperor smiled subtly, proud of her courage. She took a deep breath. "The Empire taught me that strength means perfection. But perfection is a cage. Strength is the ability to rise even when everything around you tries to push you down. And that is what I have done." A murmur spread across the room, respectful, thoughtful, even emotional. "I do not seek revenge," she said clearly. "I seek change. Let no one in our empire be judged for a limitation they did not choose. Let no future leader be mocked for something beyond their control. Our society must be wiser than that." The council exchanged glances. Some nodded. Some even looked moved. Leora stepped back. The Emperor placed a gentle hand on her shoulder before addressing the council. "We have witnessed transformation," he said proudly. "Not just in Leora, but in what is possible. I propose that Leora becomes the future heir one who represents resilience and unity." The chamber erupted into whispers. Ethan held the child close, watching everything with hope in his eyes. Leora felt frozen. She had dreamed of earning her place, but she never imagined it would happen this soon, or in this way. One by one, the council members raised their hands in agreement. Even those who once doubted her now supported her. Her heart raced, overwhelmed by the sudden reality. She had returned not only with a child, but with a chance to shape the Empire's future. After the session ended, Leora returned to the balcony with Ethan and the baby. The air was cool and fresh, filled with thousands of cheering voices. The citizens below held banners, glowing lights, and symbols of unity. They chanted her name, welcoming her not as a weak princess, but as a strong one. Ethan gently handed her the baby. "You did it," he whispered. "No," she said softly, looking at her child. "We did it. All three of us," he smiled, standing beside her as the sky slowly brightened into full daylight. Later, as the celebrations continued, Leora walked through the palace gardens with Ethan. The scent of white flowers surrounded them. The baby slept peacefully in her arms. It was the first calm moment she had felt all day. "What will you do now?" Ethan asked quietly. Leora looked at the shimmering sky. "Lead, learn, and give my child a future where no one is judged the way I was." Ethan nodded. "And I'll help. However I can." She looked at him warmly. Earth had given her healing, but Ethan had given her strength. His steady presence had carried her through every moment of doubt. "You belong here too," she said softly. He raised an eyebrow. "In a world of floating bridges and glowing towers?" "Yes," she replied with a smile. "In my world," a quiet wind brushed past them. Leora felt peace real, peace for the first time in her life. The empire that once laughed at her now looked to her for guidance. The people who once dismissed her now trusted her voice. And the child in her arms, born from two worlds, carried a future brighter than anything she had ever imagined. The journey that began as a cruel joke had become her greatest victory. She had returned stronger, wiser, and no longer alone. Her story was no longer about what she lacked. It was about what she created. And this time she walked forward with confidence, knowing that every step she took would change her empire forever.